Hello, and thanks so much for joining this mini episode of the Enneagram and Marriage podcast. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, thank you for pressing play. Thank you for joining and taking this heroic moment in your marriage or relationship story to work so hard on how you can find your way back together. This is for the person who just says, what do we do when we hit conflict, when we hit walls, when we're in fight or flight? And I'm also going to give you a few tips type by type as well. If you're an Enneagram lover here, which I know many of you are, so I'm so grateful and happy to get this time together because we had such a big week last week. And now I feel like my family is back more in the swing of things. Some of you know Wes was injured and he's still recovering, doing telemedicine today, actually downstairs. And we have had such a wild week, but he is was able to go on a moderate walk with me last night, and his pain is manageable. And he's obviously having a good time being a one and back into productivity. So thank you for all the thoughtfulness. And I just wanted to continue to share that praise report. Of course, it was a crazy time. So very, very thankful to be on this side of it. And also very in awe of all of you ones out there who are just making sure to stay active, even though you're in pain. So I think we can always learn things from each and every one of the Enneagram types. And that's what I'm looking at with ones right now. I actually have a couple of other ones who are having something wrong right now. And I'm just amazed to see the strength behind it. So, love to point each and every type out to us as we grow, because hopefully all of us will take a bit of each piece of the other personality types at their best and integrate that as well. But you already perhaps heard our Monday episode too. And if you didn't, I hope you'll go back because I loved getting to talk to Raleigh Sadler about vulnerability as well. Because let's be honest, this has been a very vulnerable season in our family too, when somebody's down for the count. And in your family too, sometimes you need to just go within and say, I'm scared, I'm sad, and to self reflect. And so we want to do both of those things. And one of the reasons that a couple weeks ago we went to Comic Con and made such a fuss about getting to see my favorite character from Lord of the Rings was because I wanted to say to that character, I'm just so glad that you showed us a vulnerable way to process emotions, because it's hard for those of you who saw the live action film of LOTR. It's one of those great depictions of vulnerability and also strength. And I think we need both of those things in relationships. So check that out if you ever want to see that. I also watched Gettysburg, as I mentioned, with my son. Um, this past week, and I saw that there as well. Oh my gosh, beautiful moment between Jeff Daniels and C. Thomas Howell, and just showing after a huge battle that they had a huge hug also. So I'm just learning that we can be both strong and show our weakness at the same time, guys. So let's do that. And here in a conflict episode, even though it's a mini, I want to take you through that same narrative, that you know that when we're trying to draw back towards one another, the biggest temptation is to put on the armor and show that we're stronger, right? Might makes right is a message we hear a lot from the playground to the grave. And we have to combat that message with realizing, yes, we're strong, or for those who are in faith, strong in Christ, but there are beautiful gifts as well as weaknesses. So we have to be able to identify both and to allow our spouses to know that when we're trying to have a heart to heart, when we've hurt each other's hearts, because that's really what it is behind the anger, frustration, and fight and flight responses, we have to let them know that we're hurt, or if we hurt them, we have to sit with that hurt. And the only way we can do that is to walk near each other with a sense of course, if you know some of our episodes on Enneagram, we would just say kind of top level work would be walking through to make sure you have your passion so that you show your care, that you have your positivity so that you can keep it as light as possible, as well as that you have your logic so you could actually make headway. But what I am reminding you of today is that sometimes an apology is needed. If you've read my book, you know a little bit more about healing an attachment wound. But I'm just going to walk with you today through this other piece, which is about making sure that you know how to apologize if need, and also how to get rid of these protectors from sabotaging, internal protectors from sabotaging this work you're trying to do. So, first and foremost, I want you to remember that each of us has, of course, a self, but also parts. And so, just noticing that there's a part of you when your spouse and you are upset with each other that shows up to protect number one, you. But what we really want that protector to do is protect you both and realize, I love this person. We're a we. We perhaps even see ourselves as one flesh. And so instead of that dynamic of, I want to be on top, I want to beat them, I have this quick heuristic that I'm doing to put me up and them down, we instead invite ourselves into some more frontal lobe processing, which requires a deep breath and some self validation that says, I know that you're going to be okay. Just internal script here. I know that you are feeling frustrated, hurt, sad, and I'm going to take care of myself here. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to make sure I'm okay. I'm going to be okay no matter what here. And right now, I also want to make sure my partner feels okay because I know they also have protectors right now. So if you're the one who's hurting, try to let your spouse know, I have a part of me that's still hurt, but I love you and I'm going to be okay. But I just wanted to let you know so this doesn't happen again. And then you go back and nurture those pieces of yourself that need to be nurtured. Maybe you need to go give yourself a rest or something healthy to self soothe with. And when your partner is upset with you, you can also remember, like I said, that they have their protectors, but that it's also healthy sometimes in those moments to say, gosh, I really want you to be okay too. And I'm so sorry if I didn't show empathy in a moment you needed it. I'm so sorry that I missed something important to you because I care about you too. And that will help you with their internal protectors because their internal protectors, like I said, are strong, also protecting your partner. And so when they hear you saying, this part of them hears you saying, I care about my partner very much. And I'm sorry if I hurt my partner, then there's a sense of negotiation that becomes possible. Like if we both know that we love each other deeply, but that a part of us felt upset, then I think we can do this where we move forward, taking our deep breaths and remembering that we each need to care for ourselves, but also in turn care for each other. So that's a great way to walk through a basic disagreement, conflict, and it lands you at a place of negotiation or even just tenderness. Sometimes it's not really the issue, it's the how, it's the process that your spouse or partner just wants to know, will you be here with me? Will you sit with me in my hurt? Or you want to know that with them. So allow yourselves once again to clarify, to notice the protective parts of each of you, and then to get behind that by saying, I'm going to speak to the inner part of us, the part of us that really needs to be spoken to, which is our sadness, our grief, our pain, and let my partner know that I'm feeling this way, but that I can take care of me largely, but I do love them and hope they'll care for me too. And that if I hurt them, I'm sorry I hurt them. And I really want to make, if needed, reparations. And even if there's an extended desire by one or both of you, you might even add to that, here's what we'll do next time. So those are some basic tips for when you're in a conflict, in addition to the Enneagram tips of adding your passion, your logic, and your positivity. Now, to briefly take a little bit of a deep dive, I have some tips for each of you. So just remember, if you're a 1 and you're feeling like, how can I find my way back to my partner? Remember, you're going to need some time because ones do move so fast, like we said earlier. So ask yourself if you've had some good one-on-one time with your partner and allowed yourself time to just enjoy without stress or guilt, and allow them to know that you're not critiquing them, but offering grace, and even schedule some date night planning in as well so that your partner feels like they know that you're going to put boundaries around that time, even while you're putting all these boundaries around the other important things that you're having to do. So I just want to emphasize connection time. You're allowed to get it. Ones can feel so guilty about that, but it's now, if you're a 2, I want you to remember to check in about your own self-care time, and also to check in with what kind of love your partner's already giving you, because there's an endless need for love sometimes from a 2 who feels a major neglect wound. And you can also allow for some time with God to fill that wound as well if you're a person of faith. But I really love that you do love fun, you do love together time. So that's why I say, if you really want to know how to come back to each other, there's a bit of an irony here that you have to release a little bit and let them come back to you when they see you getting self-care. Now, as a 3, often very uncomfortable to sit with the emotional work, but don't compare your work to the work of others. You and your partner are not perfect. Nobody is. You don't have to show up like you think you are. Be real. Let them see that authentic side because that's what they really married. Even if they don't know it yet, even if neither of you really knows your authentic side, spend time getting that unnecessary pressure off both of you and allow yourself some time to see the beauty in what you really are like versus just any masks. So you're allowed to take those small steps forward in that gracious way to just show who you really are. And I encourage you on that if you really want to find your way back. Now, for fours, sometimes that depression can settle in so hard, and I want you to treat that if it is there. Sometimes people treat that with over the counter ways of handling it. And we've talked a lot about that here, but sometimes you need other attentions too. So make sure you're talking to your counselor, therapist, coach, exhaling the doubt that you're not lovable, exhaling the doubt that you're just so bad off that you couldn't be redeemed. And then some of you fours are not doing that at all, and you're just frustrated with others depending on your subtype. But I want you to know, again, your relationship won't be perfect, but you're worthy of love and being thoughtful about doing your self-care and body work even without your partner forcing you into it. Sometimes fours have to be pulled up into it. That's the goal, because they're going to come back to you when they see you taking care of you. That's so important to relationship health. Now, fives, often you're taking care of you because you know you need that in a self protective way. But I also want you to know you don't have to rush your independent time. I know that you love to sit in that and be free and make your plans in quiet spaces, and you don't have to rush through it. But I do want you to remember to come back specifically and to make the most of your time away. So, in other words, when you are taking some self care time, really take it. Allow yourself to feel and grieve what you need to. Really allow for that part of you, that inner part of you to be tended to, and then you'll come back more whole. And if you feel like you need help and you're vulnerable there, it is okay for you to also ask for help or to get coaching. Of course, getting romance helps too. But as a six, if you're a six, make sure you allow yourself time to work through your emotions. Sometimes people try to rush our sixes from this space of like, okay, let's move forward, stop worrying. And telling a six to stop worrying doesn't really help you guys to find your way back to each other. But what can help is for the six themselves to pause, to breathe, and actually to take the time they need. And some of that with the partner, some of that on their own. Also, make sure you talk about your new rhythms as you find your ways. You're going to have some compromises sometimes in these conversations we're having. And so, talk about those new rhythms and what they'll look like so you can have your healthy planning six. Now, as a seven, you know you're worth it for big, loud self care work, but did you also know it? And I hear this from sevens a lot on Instagram, that you're worth it to slow down and to pace and to focus. And it's always fun when I get to hear that from them, because they're always like, wait, what sevens do I know that ever stop? And I'm like, well, that's a really good question. And I hope that you know that when you really are finding your way back to each other, it's because you're stopping, slowing down, and just being present and taking deep breaths and setting boundaries. Many times sevens are so busy. My husband will tell me about his seven friends. They're so busy, they're not thinking of me. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They're probably running all over and not doing the boundaries thing. So I feel for you, but I want you to know you're worth it, to slow down and to say no sometimes so that you can find your way back to your partner. Eights, of course, a similar treatment for you is when you're trying to find your way back together, to slow down a bit. And it's hard to do that, but it's important. And I do know a lot of eights who have been learning that step to get into their heart space. It's not that far for eights to go into the heart space. So when you do, allow your spouse to hear from your heart, not just that physical body part we talked about earlier, that the protector part. Eights being called the protector, you really get it, that those protector parts of you are big. So we want to get through those and have some vulnerability, not all vulnerability, but let your partner into some. And also look back on the good of your story. That will help you to move back toward one another, because sometimes we forget that when we're just upset in the moment. But I want you to remember what you do love about your partner, and remember no one is perfect. Now, as a nine, I know that often you feel like you're not heard, and finding your way back together looks a lot like making sure your partner knows you need to be heard, right? We always will say that to a nine. And sometimes we also add to that, that our nine will make sure too, to make sure they hear themselves. so that they're not just asking their partner to do their work, but that they are also doing their work to say, what do I need internally, not just for comfort, but for actual action steps. I noticed that with my 9 the other day. Some of you may be wondering, is she still doing her driving? And she is still in driver's training, and she's just getting the really good hang of it. And one of the pieces of that was a couple days ago, she's like, should I drive this or that car? And I told her, drive this one. Your dad's out of commission anyway right now for driving. And she drove it and she felt so empowered to take some time in his car, and it was a really cool thing because she was in her action, and she's like, "I had the best time with you out." And I was just realizing, like, had she been just a passenger and not as active, I don't think she would have said that, but she was alive and awake. So I just wanna encourage you, nines, that you get towards your partner, and she was toward me. She's not in a partnership yet, but when we talk about this, we're talking about you with everybody in your life. When we take these steps of being active and healthy and balanced, we come back toward everybody in our lives in healthy ways. So that's my tip for you, nines. Stay there, being fully awake and inviting in some fun together too. Nines need fun and joy in their relationship. So I hope you heard this episode for yourself. I hope you heard it for your partner. And I hope you take one tip, even if it's just, I'm going to be watchful for the ways I protect myself during an argument. And I'm going to be trying to watch for the ways that I may be looking at this from a me versus them. And maybe it's your individual tip, or maybe it's a tip you want to share with your spouse. But I hope that you'll take a deep breath and celebrate the work you've done today. And thank you so much for joining me on this mini episode. Remember, if you want a deeper dive, do not forget to get my book, The Hidden Chapter. And I will talk to you soon. Bye bye.